What's going on, Brighter Mindset family? Thank you for coming back to improve the quality of our thoughts, to improve the quality of our life yet again. You are amazing. Just want to make a quick shout out to all 600 of you that have decided to listen to the Brighter Mindset podcast. That's a huge, huge number. And I want to give a shout out real quick to anybody that is watching on YouTube, here on Google Podcasts, here on Apple Podcasts, here on Spotify. And if you're listening, no matter where you are listening or watching, please make sure you hit the follow or subscribe button, because that helps a lot at getting this podcast out to more and more people. I'm just going to say that once and we're good. Every single one of you deserves a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking your time to listen to this. I really hope that this episode adds to anything else that you have heard before. On that note, if this is the first episode, you're welcome to listen to this as a standalone episode. However, I urge you to start at episode 000. Every single one of these episodes right now is a series and it builds on each other, and we may reference things that we have discussed in previous ones. But again, you'll still be able to listen to this as a standalone, but if you want to get the most out of this topic that we are diving deep into, yes, start at episode 000. On that note, I'm going to now step over to my regular habit of saying thank you to listeners from different countries. First one is the Isle of Man, and actually it is an island in the Irish Sea, and it's a part of the British Isles, but it's not of the United Kingdom. This was something tricky. I actually had to look into it and read about this. It's considered a crown dependency. It's self-governing, but it still falls under the rule of the British Crown. Pretty cool. Anyone who is there and who's listening to this on this little island between Ireland and the United Kingdom, I see you. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks for listening. And the second is Malaysia, a place I have always wanted to go to. The people from there seem so wonderful and beautiful. The country itself seems so beautiful. The culture seems amazing. And I've met so many of you through Instagram. So I just want to give you a shout out. Whoever is there in Malaysia listening to this, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I really look forward to visiting one day. Hopefully in the next few years, I would love to take my son there as well, along with my wife. Okay, so today we're going to continue diving deep into this topic that I like to say is the most important topic that I could discuss on this podcast. And it's all about living in a greater state of happiness. And the only way that I think, a surefire way, the way that I have learned from my spiritual teachers to live in a beautiful state of happiness is to have an amazing perspective. And the perspective specifically for this topic is the ability of being able to see the good in events and people in all situations. The ability of being able to dig out that one thing in someone else or an event that you can look at and find something good. Okay, let's now quickly do a short recap of the last episode. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because anyone who's listening, I want you to be able to go back and really get a lot out of it. First thing we were thinking about was the importance of approaching a new concept with a very open mind. Okay, and going into it with eagerness. That continues for this episode. And there's something when you're listening to a new concept, a new perspective, not everything is going to align with your way of thinking, and that's fine. What is important is when you are listening with the eagerness to learn, you take the best of what you hear, things that you can really apply immediately or in the near future, and you leave the rest. You just take the best that you can and the things that you align with and leave the rest, and at least walk away with something that you can learn. And we discussed something called confirmation bias and how it can actually limit us, and how in some cases we use our identity, which is probably one of the most important aspects of our psychology. Tony Robbins would talk about it saying it was the strongest force in the human personality. And we dug really deep into that to really unpack it and see how we use our identity to either serve us or to hold us back. And at the end of that, we discussed how sometimes we use our identity as a crutch. And if you're curious what I mean by that, go back to episode 002 and listen to that episode. It will, in my case, it blew my mind when I learned this and I understood this about myself. And I hope it provides the same value to you. And we ended on a powerful thought that maybe all we really need in our life is not everything in our life to change, but just a new way of looking at the exact same life we have. What do we have to lose by adopting a new perspective for the life we already have? There's a chance it will make it better. And that is what we're going to do today. We're going to dig deeper into this one idea that can really enhance the quality of our life. I want you to think about this. Think about two different people. One person who has absolutely nothing when it comes to items and wealth and possessions, but they're truly happy. And then somebody who has everything they could possibly have and they're not happy. The real difference between the two people is their perspective. One person's able to be joyful and happy with very few things. The other person has a lot of things and yet is unhappy. It's really just their perspective and how they see the situation. And in the first episode, 001, we clarified what the main goal of everything that we do is. Do you guys remember what that is? What is the main goal of almost all the actions that we take on a daily basis? It's happiness. We do it because we want to be happy or happier in one way or another. The first question that I want to tackle today that we discussed at the end of the last episode is, what if I can't see something good in somebody? Period. What do I do? What is the situation? Well, for that, I actually had all of us do a little thought exercise, something I asked everybody. I wanted everyone to take an opportunity to think. What did I ask? It was a question about the tree. There was a story I gave about a tree. And in that, at the end, I asked a simple question. Can you think of a reason why somebody would have a coconut tree for 80 years in their coconut farm that never has produced a coconut? What could be one good reason why anybody would waste the time to water and fertilize and provide for a tree that's never produced a coconut? And, I had so many people reach out and just share what they thought their one positive thing. And here's one response that I received from somebody. They said, the farmer should honor the coconut tree for exactly what it is and appreciate what it does offer. So it may not give a coconut, but it provides shade. It may not be as useful and as valuable as any of the other trees, but you can still find it to be a beautiful tree. You can still find beauty in it. And this person added something beautiful, that and you can also have hope that it will one day offer a coconut. So that was just one example. You can find anything. If you think about it deeply enough, you can find something about a coconutless tree in a coconut farm, and you can find something good about it. And one of the reasons why I wanted everyone to do that thought exercise is exactly because it's practice. We want to be able to get to a point where we can see good in everyone and in everything around us at as many moments as you possibly can. You want to be able to find the good. And if you can start practicing doing that, the easier it will become for you to do it in your life in everyday situations. So we all know that we want to be able to find that one good thing that someone's done. And sometimes it's hard. I really admit that. Sometimes it seems as if it's absolutely impossible. So the question, what if I can't find any good qualities in someone or see any good in them? What do we do? Well, maybe that means we have to get to know them better. What do I mean by that? Let's think about this. I had a situation, it was probably about 15 years ago. I was sitting in a lecture and the speaker is speaking, and then all of a sudden I hear somebody like making noises. Every 30, 40 seconds, they would scream out a word or two that this presenter just spoke. They would make other types of noises. They would scream out words, thoughts that were in their mind. And it was just happening every 2 minutes. All the time, all you heard was just somebody being so obnoxious and so rude to the presenter and actually disturbing everybody around them. I couldn't see whether this person was. I could tell it was a gentleman, but I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't understand why anybody would do what they were doing. And I started judging that person immediately in my mind. How insensitive is this person? I cannot believe that as an adult, you're sitting here and you're doing this. Like, why do you have to keep saying stuff? And in my mind, it's just the judgment started. It got worse and worse and worse and worse in my head. And then I would just like, I need to go find who this person is and just tell them, can you leave? Like, you're making it impossible for me to pay attention to anything. And it became, about me, obviously, in that moment. And I didn't go up to him. I kind of just sat through it, but I just was fed up and I was kind of upset. Don't even remember what the lecture was about. Afterwards, what ended up happening is we were going to eat. And as we sat down to eat, I overheard somebody saying, that was very frustrating and annoying of whatever that guy was doing, just making all those noises. And then the person next to him said that they can't control it. They have Tourette's syndrome. And the moment I heard that, it's like I got washed over with these feelings of just absolute regret and shame. Without knowing anything about this person, I had developed a view and an opinion of him, and I was judging him, and I thought so many negative things about him, and I was like ready to say something very insensitively to him without even taking anything about that person into consideration. By the way, so if you don't know what Tourette's syndrome is, it's basically a neurodevelopmental disorder that affects the developing nervous system. And it's characterized by sudden, exactly what happened, sudden and uncontrolled movements or vocal sounds called tics, like blinking or coughing, throat clearing, sniffing, facial movements, and even words and phrases. I learned a really big lesson while I was sitting there. And as I heard that, the first thought that I had was, how did I have the audacity to judge someone without even taking a moment to ask them any questions, to get to know them even a little bit? If you don't know someone enough, maybe we shouldn't be judging them. If we don't fully know somebody, if we don't fully understand their situation, if we don't fully know what the person may be going through in their mind, maybe we shouldn't be judging them. Martin Luther King said something really beautiful. He said, "Why do people hate one another?" And he posed that question and he immediately went to start answering it. He said, "People hate one another because they fear one another." And then he said, "People fear one another because they don't know one another." And just think about that real quick. People fear one another because they don't know one another. And then he simply said, people don't know one another because they are separated from them. In his case, he's talking about segregation, but you can apply that to our life right now. If you are removed from somebody, far enough removed, you are not actually seeing their life. You're not living with them. You're not around them. You don't understand them. Of course, you're not going to really know them. And if you don't know them, why would we judge them? Why? It's a simple fact. The more of an effort that we put into getting to know somebody, there is a very high likelihood, there are many more chances that we might find something about them, learn something about them, see something in them that we might appreciate, that we might actually feel for or have a soft spot for. There's a very good chance the more effort you put into getting to know somebody, the more likely you are to like them. And that requires a genuinely good heart, though. In the process of trying to get to know someone, you can't get to know someone with an intention or just an ulterior motive of like, you really want to figure out how bad this person is. But digging in and trying to get to know somebody, asking questions, understanding their story, really with an eagerness to learn, then you leave a door wide open that you could walk through that's going to be full of so many virtues of that person that you otherwise would never have seen. So while it sounds really great, right? This idea of getting to know somebody, I know exactly how impractical it is. There's no way that we're going to be able to actually get to know someone at such a deep level that we'll know everything about them. There's no way that we're going to get to a point where we'll meet everyone that we could potentially judge and get to know everyone and know what they've been through, know what they're going through, know what they're thinking, know what they're struggling through, know who's offended them or who has hurt them recently, know what pain that they're hiding or running away from, know what anxieties that they might be battling. There's no way that we're going to be able to know how someone recently upset them or how somebody recently let them down or how they may have very low self-esteem in the moment because of something they just went through, or that they might be depressed, or that they might be scared, or they might be worried, or what are they worried about. We don't know if they've recently lost somebody. We don't know that. We don't know what's going on in their mind. From the moment they woke up to the moment that we are interacting with that person, there are millions of thoughts that they've had. There are hundreds of different situations and scenarios that they have been through before they came in front of us. We have no idea what all of those were. We also don't know if someone has broken their trust and they're dealing with that. Should I go on with this list? There's a reason why I'm making this list of all the things that we cannot possibly know of someone. It's a reason why I'm making this list as long as I am, because I mean, we have no way of knowing if someone was abused when they were a little child or even when they were a young adult. We don't know if they didn't receive love as a kid. We don't know if they were bullied their whole life. We don't know if they're always self-conscious about their body image or the way they talk. We don't know if they were recently let go at work, or they got in trouble at work, or they're at the risk of losing their job, or they can't make their payments and they're struggling to pay their bills and they really want to be there for their family, but they feel really burdened because they don't make as much money as they wish they did. We don't know any of that. We don't know if their child has just yelled at them or ran away or left their home. We don't know any of this. And if it's your spouse, you don't really know what they're going through. You see them a few times in the day, but every other moment when they are alone, just like when you're alone, all the things you go through, all the things you think about, all the things that happen to you, it all gets piled up together. It's not a single event and a single moment. A person is a collection of everything that has just happened to them. Think about it. You don't know if the person on the road that is pissing you off, they just found out that their spouse wants to file for divorce. We don't know. There's no possible way that any of us can ever know everything about a person that may have played a factor in them losing their temper, or them being short, or them breaking the law, or doing anything that we are getting ready to judge them for. Just think about the last 3 minutes of everything that I mentioned. That's not even everything that a person could possibly be going through. Now add on anything that you are going through that I did not mention. All of those are factors for every human being on this planet. And if we don't know every single one of those and how each of those is impacting the person emotionally, what right do we have to really judge them? It doesn't make sense. So then what? If I can't get to know everyone, what am I supposed to do? What's the next route? Well, there's really just one. It's a hard truth, and one that you just have to swallow, a pill that you just have to swallow. We have to stop making excuses of our flawed and our limited way of thinking, our archaic way of thinking, our just primitive way of looking at others. Every question and every doubt that we have on this idea of seeing good in others and in events is just an attempt for us, by us, to conform to the belief that, quote, we're doing ourselves a favor by seeing, speaking of, identifying, and calling out the flaws of other people and events. We're not harming anyone. How is one to survive in this world otherwise? Every question or every doubt that we make is an excuse for that way of thinking. What I've noticed, though, in the world that we live in is that we are all so quick in today's society to take responsibility over other people's attitudes, other people's decisions, other people's thoughts, other people's emotional outbursts. We are all so ready. We are in the driver's seat of their life, and we're so ready to take responsibility of them. What do I mean by that? We are ready to dictate how another person should live, how they should behave, how they should react, how they should have responded, what they should have done. We are ready, and we can make a list of 100 different things that a person should do. That's just what we see all the time. But who are we really to do that for somebody? Just think about it. Why do we give ourselves that much importance? Who the heck are we that we should be telling other people what they should and shouldn't do? Things like, how dare they? They should be punished, or they should be fired, or that person should no longer be able to play, and they should have known better. Or in the extreme cases, like, that person should be sent to jail, or that person should be sentenced to death, or they should be canceled, whether it's a show or just the person in general. Or the final thing is like, who the heck does that person think they are? The question really should be, who the heck do we think we are? One moment, one decision, one mistake does not give us the whole picture. This literally happened to me the other day. We were at the park with my son and my wife, and we were throwing little pebbles and rocks over this bridge into a stream. And to the side of us, there were these beautiful trees, and they had just beautiful white and pink and reddish flowers blooming on all of the branches. It was just absolutely stunning. And it was a great time for the community to come and just take photos in this beautiful park. And then this family of the father, mother, and two kids, one older and the other one maybe about 8 years old. And I saw the mother treat the older one with so much love, so much affection, so much kindness. Or taking a group photo, and the mother had nothing but aggression. She was physically like reprimanding, pushing, yelling at, and harassing the younger child, and saying statements that made the child feel like garbage. You could see it on his face that she was constantly comparing him to the older brother, saying things like, "Why are you like this? You're never going to learn. You're such a waste of our time." Things that would hurt anybody. Like, I'm listening to this, and I remember I was playing with my son, and as I hear these statements, I'm just like, what? Who the heck are you to talk to a child like this? Like, are you a mom? Are you really a mom? Yeah, this doesn't sound like anything a mother would say. This is the worst thing that you could possibly ever say to a child. And I remember she was saying things to make the child, the younger one, feel like a burden to the family. He was crying, literally crying, and she forces him to stand in a picture with his brother, and starts taking pictures and yells at him until he smiles, because she wanted to take a great family photo of the two kids where both the kids are smiling and super happy. Can you already tell I'm judging her? Can you already hear it in my voice? Yeah, it's coming back. Yeah, it's coming back. This isn't scripted. It is for real. I was feeling furious inside, because my wife and I are so conscious, and we understand the impact words make on a child. I know what they did to me. When I heard my elders saying certain things to me, I know what it made me feel like. They may not even to this day know the impact of some of their statements, the thoughts, and how long it took me, how many years of my life I had to work on them. I had to go to therapy to actually rewrite the beliefs of myself and make them independent of the words spoken to me. So we're very mindful of that. But in this case, I remember I was just like, I started feeling angry towards the mom. And I said that there's no good reason for anyone to behave this way. And I actually felt the urge to take the kid away and protect him from his mom. And on the drive home, I ended up bringing this up to my wife, and I spoke about how her actions and what they made me feel, and how I felt that she should lose custody of her child for treating an 8-year-old like this. And I remember I said something like that. And then my wife looks at me and she just says, very maturely and exactly at the right time, she said, you have no idea the whole picture and what her story is. You have no clue what she's going through. You have no idea. And I just looked at her, and instinctively I wanted to say something, but I'm just like, no, dang, dude, she's right. I have no idea what transpired the 6 years prior, 6 months prior, even 6 minutes prior to that happening. I have no idea what the family went through. Obviously, there's no excuse for treating somebody a certain way, but my judgment and anger towards the mother, which was turning into almost like I was holding on to it. It was almost like I, I just, there's no way I was going to see anything good in her. That was going to harm me. And I'm so grateful that my wife said what she did, because I pulled myself back. While I felt that she did pain the child, I let go of the judgment I had towards the mother. And it reminded me immediately of the thoughts of, who do we think we are? Who are we to cast a judgment on someone? Just a blanket judgment at any point, to label someone a certain way because of something that we saw in a moment. How in the world can we cast a judgment? Even if it's many moments have happened across time, we still don't know everything that they're struggling with that got them to that point. I remember my current spiritual teacher, my guru, Mahant Swami, he was going and visiting someone's business, and he goes there just to visit the business and just offer a prayer for the business. And so he goes, and the person who was taking him around, they're going from one place to another. They go into a room, and they see a few of the workers sleeping on like a bench, and another person sleeping on a couch. And it was like 9:30 or something. It was the time when everyone should be working. So Mahant Swami just like looks over to the gentleman that had requested him to come to the office, and he says, how come they're sleeping? He's like, oh, they do this every day. And he's like, you don't say anything to them that they're just sleeping on the couch and the bench and the chair here and not working when they should be working? The gentleman who had requested Mahant Swami to come looks at him and says, to be honest, I'm not the one who pays his paycheck. I'm not responsible for him at all. So what do I have to say anything? Why should I do anything? The person who should be saying something or should be worried should be the owner. It's the owner's responsibility. So what do I care? And then Mahant Swami took that and he translated it over to this topic. And he said, we are not the ones who determine anyone's fate on this planet. We don't control their punishment. We don't control their karma. We don't control their life. We don't control their decisions. We do not have anything to do with that person's fate, because someone's fate is way above my pay grade. And Mahant Swami was trying to highlight something. It's like, whenever we sit here and we look at somebody who might be doing something wrong in our eyes, and we cast a judgment and we expect them and we throw the shoulds on them that you should do this, you should do this. And then, we hold on to a judgment against that person. All we're doing is we're assuming the role of being responsible for them. And we're not. We have nothing to do with them. I can barely raise my son right. I can barely be a good husband, barely a good son to my parents. There's so much room for growth for me. So who am I to look at anybody and judge them? I can't decide anything for anybody. If it was really bad, I could have, in the case of the mother and the son, like maybe called the police or tried to figure out a number for Child Protective Services and raised a red flag if I really, really wanted to, for the child's sake. But my judgment towards the mother, that isn't justified. It really isn't, because of everything we've discussed already. I cannot control anybody. I'm not a judge delivering justice. I'm not a cop arresting someone for wrongdoing. So I won't worry about how they need to improve. And instead, like my late guru, who's inspired everything I'm doing on social and even this podcast, Pramukh Swami, used to say, one should try to overcome the faults in us. We have no right to judge another person's faults. Focus on my faults, not on somebody else's. And thanks to my wife in that moment, I was able to realign myself to what I really needed to do, which was to look at my own shortcomings. not focus on hers. And it happens that quick. It's so easy to get lost in just focusing on the flaws and shortcomings of other people. So here's a natural question that comes up. What if I'm focusing on the bad character traits or their actual bad behaviors and shortcomings to protect myself, right? What if I'm doing it because I don't want to get hurt or I don't want to be taken advantage of? That makes sense, right? Like that's why I would be focusing on all these things, just so I'm aware of it, this and that. Well, there's a really, really big difference between seeing faults, shortcomings, character flaws, and focusing on faults, shortcomings, and character flaws. They're two vastly different things. For example, when you're driving, we all see cars or motorcycles or bicyclists or pedestrians in the lane next to us or in front of us or on the sidewalk. But when we are driving, we don't focus on them while driving. We focus on the road ahead. Another example is when you're playing sports, you see the members of the audience that are watching the game. But when we have the ball in hand or we're going to try to score, we're not focusing on the audience at all. We're focusing on the game. You might see them, but your focus is elsewhere. So someone asked my late guru, Pramukh Swami, he said, what are we supposed to do then? Like, are we just not supposed to see that this person keeps making this mistake because you're working with them as a team? Or are we just not supposed to pay attention to how mean or how angry or how whatever this other person is or these constant flaws of this person? We're just supposed to what? Just pretend that they never happened? Well, then Pramukh Swami said, no, that's not what to do. But for our own sake, it's our job to see it, but then become blind to it. To hear these things, to know that this stuff has happened or these things are happening, but then become deaf to them. Don't make it a point of focus. To survive in the world, we must see it and not be ignorant or naive. But he said, if we cast a judgment against them and view them by that mistake, then we are truly the ones who are naive. We are the ignorant ones. We are the fools because we won't be happy. Happiness is a result of our perception and the way that we see the world. It's not a result of the things that we have or all the things that are going well. Even things could not be going well, and you have a beautiful way of looking at the world, situations, your life, and you could still find a way to be happy. Remember, the end game is that I want to be happy, nothing else. You cannot be happy and also constantly be pissed off and annoyed because of someone else's shortcomings. Those two do not exist in the same field. They're completely two different things. Getting ticked off by certain people and then trying to be happy at the same time, that just does not work. That being said, there's something very, very important that I wanted to highlight. This is something that came up as my wife and I were discussing this topic. What about someone who is just out to get you? What about someone who is just mean on purpose to you at all times? Why in the world would you want to see good in them? As a parent, I know how important it is to provide our children with books that go beyond mere entertainment. We want stories that ignite their imagination and introduce them to values and life lessons that will help them throughout their life. Check out our latest book that is live on Amazon right now. This one's a chapter book for young girls ages 7 to 12 or 13 years old. Liv and the Magical Sewing Needle by Soni Patel, my wife. Liv is spelled L-I-V, and Soni Patel is S-O-N-I Patel, P-A-T-E-L. It's a fantastic story ripe with adventure where we follow Liv, a kind and loyal doll who sometimes wishes she looked like Maggie's other dolls. One day, she discovers that Maggie is also unhappy with her appearance. So, Liv decides to go on a special mission to help her friend feel better about herself. The empowering story across 115 pages teaches the lessons of inner beauty versus perceived beauty and the importance of honoring oneself versus trying to fit in. We have 2 other picture children's books, ages 2 and 5, with more on the way. Just search Soni Patel, Sonipatel on Amazon to find them all. Thank you for supporting our mission to provide content that nurtures young hearts and minds. We hope to continue providing books that are not only fun, but also transformative. All right, let's get back to this regularly scheduled programming. I want you to take a moment and just think about this. Why in the world would you ever want to see something good in somebody who is constantly trying to do something mean towards you? Here's the thing. Just because, and this is something that I have learned across the last 20 years of my spiritual practice, and just because you choose to see the good in someone, where you try to find that one good quality, like Pramukh Swami said in episode 001, or you try to see that good habit, or you try to find that good trait or a lesson that we can learn from looking at their life, that does not mean that you need to become their friend. It does not mean that you need to call them to your house and spend time with them and talk to them and go and hang out with them and do all these different things. All it means is that you made a choice in your mind for your sanity, for you to be happy, to see something good in them. It does not mean you have to invite them into your life. They could still be toxic. But for us as individuals to see that, that is an us thing. It is for us. It is in our mind. It is for our sanity. This perspective of consciously choosing to see the good in all situations and in all people benefits and is for only one person, the person who adopts the view, me and you. That's who this is for. I think that is a really important distinction to make. Just because you choose to see something good in somebody does not mean you're condoning their behavior. You are just seeing the good in them because you know there's no other way for you to be happy unless you can do that, even in someone who's trying to hurt you. So let's think about that real quick. The person who thinks this way and is able to really see that good is the person who will not be riddled with negative, annoying thoughts of stress and sadness. That person will not have any of those negative things. Someone who chooses to just focus on the negative stuff and just be annoyed by that stuff, you're going to have those experiences. You're not going to be able to have that stability that we're all craving. It's just a matter of a flip in our perspective. Look, I know somebody personally who has a very difficult time going through any conversation without cracking a joke at the cost of somebody else, at somebody else's expense. And most people, actually, I think everybody that I know, whenever this person comes around, they're so annoyed. There's a part of them that just does not want to be around that person because they're constantly making these types of mean comments and jokes and just underhanded comments that just make people feel uncomfortable. And, I used to do just that. I used to feel that. I used to do all of these things and feel so bad around this person and judged him like crazy until I adopted the mindset that my guru has been trying to teach me for so many years. I've chosen now, instead of feeling that resentment towards him because of the things that he may have said towards me or my family or my wife or anything like that, I've chosen to try and get to know him as a person deeper, try to have conversations with him. And I realized through just a few conversations that these bursts of insensitive social behavioral habits and borderline insulting and personal attacks was really nothing more than a cry for attention, appreciation, and acceptance. This poor guy had spent so much of his life not getting any of those. Everything that they did in the social space was a cry for one of those three things. And I realized that by seeking to understand him, I was able to look past what I saw at face value. And I saw and got to know a very different person. I actually started to feel bad for this person instead of being offended and annoyed and angered by this person. There is no happy human being who has the audacity to regularly go out of their way to seek pleasure in the pain of other people. Let me say that one more time. There is no happy human being, someone who's truly happy, who has the audacity to regularly go out of their way to seek pleasure in the pain of other people. There's no happy, sure, secure, confident, kind human being that will ever do this. If you are somebody at any point that has gone out with the intention of causing pain to someone, right now, introspect on that moment. You were not happy. There was no part of you in that moment was full of joy and love. None. That is not possible. If someone does inflict that type of pain, just know that they are not happy. Okay? They are likely very insecure. They probably have some unresolved self-esteem issues, and they're definitely not feeling loved, even if they hide behind this veil or this costume or this guise that they actually are loved and they're feeling complete and they're whole. They're not. You can't be in that state and cause pain. So if you know someone who is bad with their intentions, behaviors, words, actions, and causing pain, and just a horrible person overall, and you have that judgment or grudge against them, and if it's this person who is constantly coming after you, trying to hurt you or harass you in one way or another, know this to be an absolute fact. They are hurting. They are in pain. They're actually in pain, period. Whether that person knows it or not, they're hurting. You can only give what you have. You can only give what you have. So if you give pain, then you must have pain in your heart. Only a person who is hurting can hurt another person. These are facts. If you can internalize this, if I can internalize what I just said out loud, then in any situation and at any moment, if anybody does anything to try to personally attack me or to make me feel insignificant or small, especially on social media, by anyone making any type of a comment to kind of try to tear me down, I should realize right away that that poor person is actually very poor emotionally. That person is in pain and they're hurting. You know, he's repeated this over and over and over and over again. And I want you all to hear this. If you've read this in any of my posts, this is just another time to take a moment to think about this. Pramukh Swami said, "You can never be happy making another person miserable." This itself has the power to change everything that we do. Every moment where we're about to be angry and use force and aggression to try to change someone for the good, just remember this. You can never be happy making another person miserable. So regardless of how subtle the jab at your reputation is or how insignificant or small the insult is from this person, if they take time to insult you, remember, they're not happy. Let that sink in. I mentioned it maybe 5 or 6 times because the more you think about it, I guarantee you are going to realize this is almost like a law. It's like the law of gravity. It exists. It's real. It's there. You can't do anything to remove it. This is also a fact. This is real. And this opens up another door in our heart, by the way, when you're able to realize this. So have the heart, have the maturity to think of the other person's plight, not just what they have done or they're doing or they're saying. Think about their pain. Think about their suffering. Think about their hurt. Think about their situation. What's the best thing to do when we see someone who isn't happy? What's the best thing that we can do? Have compassion for them. Act with civility. Act with humanity. Act with maturity and wisdom. Act like somebody who has emotional intelligence, just a normal person with common sense, and approach the other person with love and kindness. When you realize that someone isn't happy, what other options are there that are good, that bring the world together, that bring people together? This just makes sense. Having compassion, acting with civility, having humanity, and having maturity to approach them with love and kindness. That's it. Too many people nowadays take so much pride in being hard and tough and rough and emotionless. And to be honest, I just do not see how that can be called bravery, how that can be called being tough emotionally. No, that's not. Look, humility requires bravery. Compassion requires intelligence and wisdom. And if you take it a step further, when we wish well for somebody else, when we pray for someone else who's trying to hurt you, going beyond humility, going beyond compassion, that just shows that you or I have emotional intelligence. We're mature. And, we're mature. Why? Because we realize that there's zero benefit in taking that person's actions personally. Why? Because it's actually not about us. What that person said or what that person's doing has nothing to really do with us. So when someone says something that is hurtful, those words say way more about their ignorance, their immaturity than anything else. Their words don't hold any weight. They shouldn't make any impact on us and make us feel any certain way. Why do we give power to someone's words when you realize they're coming from a place of pain? This is a realization that can change everything. Those words are empty, and those words are just masking their own hurt. And another thing that this is able to do, when you are able to pray for somebody or wish well for somebody who's trying to hurt you, is that it shows your maturity to realize that you care more about their happiness than what they're saying or doing to you. That is what I have been taught is spirituality. That is spirituality lived. That is a brighter mindset, choosing positivity, but choosing love and kindness. And what we're doing in this moment, there's a word, it's empathy. That is spirituality lived. And that's the coolest freaking thing in the world when someone can do this. If you ever run into somebody who has a heart like this, a heart of gold, someone who doesn't care about the things that are happening to them, but cares more to be kind and compassionate, even to those that hurt them, I'm telling you, please, 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 keep them around. Aspire to be like these people. Make those people your friends. Learn from them. That is good company. Those are people worth being around. That is what you call a quality human being. Everyone else, even us, when we choose to be violent or aggressive or passive aggressive or deceitful or angry, we are acting more like animals than we are acting like humans. And when it comes to this certain individual in my life that I was talking about earlier, because I feel so blessed to have been gifted with these thoughts, I now have many long conversations whenever we cross paths. And I actually have noticed that I feel love for him. I feel bad that he doesn't even realize that he's doing what he's doing, that he has all this pain that he's never addressed, and he's making other people feel so bad. So I try to help by being a sounding board and encourage him to dig and reconsider certain actions. And, it doesn't always work where he wants to listen or talk, but this approach always works for me. I am not pained. I'm not losing sleep. I'm happy before, I'm happy during, and I'm happy after any interaction I have with him. And isn't that the goal for all of us? To be able to do this at all times? I'm doing this here with this one person, but if I got myself to do it here, I'm more likely to be able to do it anywhere else in my life. And this is exactly what we discussed as what our main goal was in episode 001, right? Being able to have this ability of being happy in all situations. Don't you want to be happy? Look, I don't hate him. I don't despise things he's said about me or my wife. And yes, he has. I don't take anything he says personally, at least not anymore. I used to for a long time. And I truly thank God and my gurus for this perspective to see past his behavior and actions and do what my guru, Mahant Swami, told me to talk about on this first podcast. See the good. Now, what do I mean by see the good? Now, I just talked about all these things about this person, his way of speaking, his way of being insensitive, the things that he's said and done to me and my wife and other people around me, the way he's broadcasted my vulnerabilities, just all these different types of things. What do I mean by seeing good in this person? Everything I just mentioned, it's really hard to ever want to look past any of that. But when you take the time to look past, you start finding things like what I found. I found that he was very intelligent. I found that he was a much better student than I ever was. I found that he has way more discipline in his life than I do. He is more articulate and can speak about current events way better than I can. Is stricter when it comes to certain austerities that I might be taking on from a spiritual perspective than myself. He is actually a better son than I am. He is more well read on so many things, especially history, than I ever have been. And he's able to connect the dots from history to modern times in ways that I wish I could. And his grammar is far better than mine. He writes better than me. He's held a job longer than me. He's continued to do well in his professional life. I can continue going on and on and on. And this perspective, I feel, is a gift that my gurus gave to me. And that is why I'm trying to share this, because somebody who could have been causing me so much pain, who did cause me pain, I can't even get myself to not feel any emotion other than love for the person. At times, I think other things would creep in, but immediately I squash those feelings and I jump right back to having these feelings towards them. It's what I've learned from my teachers and mentors across the last 20 years of my spiritual journey. And it's the most rewarding process ever. It's, I feel, and I've been taught, the fundamental thing to leading a life with more joy and leading a life of spirituality in any sense of the word. This is key. And this is a perspective that every single one of us can adopt and learn. And that's why we're talking about it right now. Thanks to the constant lessons and guidance from my gurus, I understand him from a place of love and empathy that I never thought I could before. And when we have that empathy, that word right there, empathy, EMPATHY, it's just 7 letters, but it is one of the most powerful words. When we have that, it makes perfect sense to want to wish well for them. It makes perfect sense to want to pray for them. And yes, it makes perfect sense to want to see good in them. Empathy is a master key. He still says and makes comments in public to try to broadcast my vulnerabilities from my past or some of my shortcomings, or insinuating things that aren't true to make me look like a bad person for attention in the moment or to get a laugh from people. But I don't lose a minute of sleep over it anymore. I'm choosing to see the good in him, and I'm choosing to realize that he's actually hurt and he's pained, and I should feel bad for him. And I think one of the reasons why this is so solidified in my mind as one of the best options for us is because this is what I've seen my gurus do over and over and over and over again in all situations with anyone, anywhere, repeatedly, thousands of times. Even with people who have tried to harm them physically, what I've seen is pure intention, pure love, pure empathy. That is a superpower. Empathy is a superpower. But wait, okay, I just said a lot. Made a lot of good claims, made it seem like, oh wow, it's going to be perfect. It's so easy. But how can I actually do this practically in my life? Is it even possible? I'm sure you're thinking that. How would I actually do this in my life? In what situation? How can I actually think that about somebody? And to answer the question, is it possible? The answer is yes. Yes, it is. My current guru's spiritual teacher, his name was Yogiji Maharaj. And Yogiji Maharaj had hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of incidents that everyone's aware of, that so many people had witnessed, and that happened in his life, where he exemplified this exact perspective that I'm really just practicing in some instances in my life, but he had practiced in almost all of instances of his life. And I want to just share one of those instances from his life that we can dissect from so many different angles and learn so many amazing things for ourselves to be able to improve our approach, our spiritual, our practice, our way of approaching the world and life. That it's It's just invaluable to do. So I wanted to share that one. And by the way, when you learn from somebody who's walking the talk, you're able to really see how to apply it. It's not theory, they're actually living it. Now, Yogiji Maharaj, he is a Hindu monk. And what that means is he's renounced. Renounced the worlds and the wealth from the world and stuff as well. So he doesn't really own anything. And they only have two pairs of cloth, long cloth, that they use as clothing. One gets wrapped around their waist and one goes around their upper body. And that's all they have. And as a Hindu monk that's wearing just two pieces of cloth, they're very simple. The way they look is very different from everyone else in society. It's orange, it's very bright. They have no possessions. They're not wearing a watch. They don't have designer clothes. They don't have anything fancy like this. They're just very simply moving around with very little. And they don't change their style in different seasons. They don't dress to fit in. It's the same outfit, whether they're meeting with dignitaries, presidents, prime ministers, or people from remote villages, farmers, and laborers. It is the same in all situations. It's simplicity. But that's one way to look at it. And another way to look at it, if it's something that you've never seen, is it might make you laugh. And there was one instance where Yogiji Maharaj and a few people were walking down a road. And on the other side of the road, there were some youth, probably 50 years younger than Yogiji Maharaj himself. And they were walking by. They saw Yogiji Maharaj in the way that he was dressed and something, whatever it was about him. And they pointed to him. And Yogiji Maharaj wasn't even paying attention. He was just walking in his own lane. But they pointed to him and just started laughing. And they started pointing and making fun and saying things. There was somebody that was traveling with Yogiji Maharaj who was not a Hindu monk. He was just a normal person. They had not renounced and had a family and everything. And he got infuriated because he's like, wait a second, what in the world? Yogiji Maharaj noticed that, okay, he's kind of upset. So he stops him and says, where are you going? And he says, I'm going to go put them in their place. How dare they laugh at you? How dare they make fun of you? What have you done to them? Why should they disrespect you? You're minding your own business innocently, just walking and not bothering anybody. That's so out of line of them. And Yogiji Maharaj looked at him a little amusingly and he said, they're laughing, right? They're not crying, right? And the gentleman said, yeah, they're laughing, but that's not okay. And Yogiji Maharaj continued and said, at least they're not crying. If seeing me made them laugh, that's a good thing. It would be a problem if our sight caused them pain. I remember the first time I heard this, I was just like, how? How, when you're being disrespected and someone's laughing at you, are you able to look at them and say, wow, I'm so glad you're laughing at the thought of me, because it's better than you crying at the thought of me. When being insulted, disrespected for nothing, no fault to your own, and that too by people decades younger than you, he wasn't at all concerned with his image or how others perceived him. He simply, with a level of empathy I pray that I can have one day in every moment of my life, he told the member of his group that was upset, let them be. They're happy. They're smiling. They're laughing. We should be happy that they are happy. Yogiji Maharaj wasn't worried about what we're usually worried about. He wasn't worried about himself. He showed that even in that moment, it was worthwhile to think of others. And it didn't matter that they were happy at the price of, or at the cost, or at the expense of Yogiji Maharaj being disrespected. He wasn't even thinking of it as an insult. That wasn't even a part of the conversation. Remember when I said don't give any weight to the statements of other people when they're trying to cause you pain? This is an example. This is what I meant. Whatever their intended goal was, in our minds, it should just fall off our shoulders like a leaf that just landed on our sleeve or something. Just brush it off, because it actually has no bearing on the reality of who you are. He saw good in the situation. That ensured he remained carefree, happy, and light. He wasn't trying to prove the other person wrong. He wasn't trying to answer them. He wasn't feeling offended or hurt. There's no feeling of vengeance. There was no emotional response. It was just empathy and love. Well, everyone knows these kids weren't really happy. They were just crying. They were finding joy in making fun of Yogaji Maharaj. Yogaji Maharaj in that moment was emphasizing as a lesson that what they do, how they live, is not our responsibility. What we do, how we live, how we think, that is our responsibility. And thinking this way brings us so much peace and joy. It does wonders for us. And I wanted to just stop here because I think we've dug really deep into this topic, because there's so much more that I want to go into, so much further I want to take this topic. But I think we did this part justice. What was the last thought we left with? What they do, how they live, is not our responsibility. What we do, how we live, how we think, is our responsibility. One will never be able to control, the other we can always control. One will never make us happy, and the other is the source of us being able to live a life of happiness. And I think thinking this way will not only just bring us peace and joy, but it will allow us to bring peace and joy wherever we go. I actually only got through half of what I thought I was going to record for this episode. And I want to just leave it here because this is a lot. We just talked about a lot. I'm really excited about the rest of this topic that we're going to be discussing, because it's going to help us really rewire the way that we think about this. And it's going to give us the power, really put it in our hands, in our control, to be able to take on these situations in our life in a very different way, in a way that will empower us and build us up. I hope this was helpful. In terms of an action item, let's first think of a question. We talked about what was in our control, right? We just ended with this idea that what we do, how we live, and how we think, that is our responsibility. I want you to think about a moment in your life where somebody has done something to cause you pain. Where did you give power to them in controlling and dictating what you would feel? How did you give them power? What did they say? What did that make you feel? How did you blame them for the feelings? And in reality, if you think about it, what were you focusing on? You were focusing on them. You're giving weight to their statements, correct? So now, on the opposite end, think, how could you have looked at that situation? How can you now look at that situation where someone wronged you and find a way to feel empathy for that person, to feel bad for that person, to think about how much pain that person must have been in, because that's something you can control. And if you can get yourself to think that about them, you are going to feel good so quickly, and you're going to feel more compassion for that person than you're going to feel hurt for yourself. And then you're going to realize that those words have no weight. So take a moment this week, or whenever you get some time, maybe even just right now, think of a moment where you were pained and you were hurt by someone, and try to get yourself to go out of your emotional state and think about the other person, and think about what type of pain that person must be going through and how unhappy they must actually be on a regular basis for them to do that to you. And if you're able to get yourself to do that, I think if you have a grudge against someone, it might make it very easy for you to be able to slowly let it go, and instead turn the hurt and the pain into compassion and empathy for another person. This is enough for today's episode. It is a long one. Again, I think they're going to get shorter. After I finish this topic, I'm going to go much shorter. They're going to be much quicker. But with that, thank all of you for listening. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to be here. And if you really enjoyed or got some value from this, please share this. Share the link of this with somebody who you think could benefit. Leave a comment. answer the question that's there. Tell me what you got out of this if you're on Spotify, and leave a review if you can. It would help me a great deal being able to get more people to want to listen to this. And if the more people listen to this, I'm certain that more people's lives are going to be made beautiful, even more beautiful than they already are. With that, I'm going to call it quits. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time to listen and think and do the hard work and introspect. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Bye. Those of you that are watching on YouTube, please make sure you go to the button right there that says subscribe and click it so that way you are alerted the next time a new episode is uploaded. And share this link with some of your friends. Go into the description. You can find any of my other social links and you can follow along. If you have any questions, leave some comments and I'd love to answer them. And if you have thoughts you want to add on to this conversation, leave some comments in the bubble as well. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time to listen and think and do the hard work and introspect. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.